Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. I'm back from the Toronto Bonsai Society Spring Show and Sale. What a fantastic weekend. I have so many things to talk about today that I had to make a list. I began working on my very first bonsai, my Ficus microcarpa that I've grown from a seed, on Ficus Friday, and now it is Tuesday, so today will become Ficus Tuesday, and I will prune the tree up using clip and grow. This weekend's bonsai show was fantastic. I loved it. 2 days of all bonsai. I was in heaven. The bonsai show is more than just a show. After the show, there's a critique where they select some of the trees in the show and talk about them, how they can be improved, talk about the good points of the trees, and it's a real learning experience. You learn a lot. You get several opinions about the tree and from different viewpoints, and you really learn. It's one of the best parts of the show, at least for me. The social after is also very important. You meet with all kinds of fellow bonsai enthusiasts. You discuss trees and techniques, and you learn a lot from that too. It really reinforces in your mind, what techniques work and what don't, and things to try and where to get materials, and it's just fantastic talking to all these bonsai enthusiasts. I always enjoy it. So the actual show, it was packed for the 2 days. It was non-stop people coming through, and I met so many people. It was fantastic. People from all over the world. It was nice to see people coming from so far away to the show. It was very exciting and much appreciated too for the exhibitors. I didn't video the vendors area. There was 2 rooms that had vendors selling pots and bonsai supplies and soil and trees, and it was fantastic. I always meant to get back up to the vendors room and do some video up there, but I just never got time. I spent the entire 2 days talking with people about bonsai, and I loved it. I did manage to get up to the vendors area and make some purchases, so I'll show you what I bought at the show. Here's what I purchased at the show. So I've got these Bonsai Clubs International magazines. I got a whole stack of them, so that's good reading material. I really like going through these old magazines for 2 reasons. One is they're loaded full of techniques, and you learn a lot. The other reason is you see the history of bonsai. Some of these magazines can be quite old. This is 1993. So this is sort of when I was first getting into bonsai. So I kind of see the history of both people and trees from way back, and it's really fascinating. It's like looking through history books and learning at the same time. So whenever I see magazines that someone's getting rid of, I always snap them up and spend hours and hours looking through them and reading them and looking at the pictures. I bought 2 pots at the show. I got this large oval landscape pot. It's beautiful. It's got a maker's stamp on the bottom here. I don't know which way is up, but yeah, there's the maker's stamp. And yeah, the price was good. It was $79. Ceramic oval green planter. So happy to get that. Over here, I was gifted a pot by Mr. Boxwood, and this is for my little miniature bench. So a beautiful little pot, really, really nice. So I'll put that down by my bench area here, and we'll use that in future. I also bought this rectangular sort of red clay pot, $30. This is a used pot. So you can see there's a little bit of chipping on the 1 foot there, but other than that, it's all good and solid. So yeah, a really good looking pot, and it has patina on it, which is really nice. It's not a brand new pot. So yeah, I'll definitely be planting something in that pot. I also purchased some pots. So here is the first pot. This is a pot made by Florence. She is a member of the Toronto Bonsai Society and makes beautiful pots. So this is kind of a I would call it a sandy, gritty kind of clay. And then it's got several glazes on it, and it's just beautiful. So I was thinking this would be ideal for a jade. Maybe this jade even. Or I might put it in that pot that Jason sent me. Oh yeah, look at that. See how the trunk color has the greens and the browns, and it matches the pot like to a T. So, and it's a fairly tall pot, which is really good for succulents. And it's clay, unglazed, so it's going to suck the water out. Yeah, just a beautiful pot Florence made, and she had lots of pots that she made there on sale, and they're all fantastic. It's so nice to see. The other pot I got was one of Wayne's pots, so here it is here. So it's a very unique shaped pot. There's the top view. It has the 4 pillars in the corners, which is very similar to like my Vietnam style pots here with the posts in the corners. So that's probably why I was attracted to this pot. It reminded me of those Vietnam style pots. So I think it's really cool. I really like it. It has a real nice glaze on it. Kind of greenish blue. Yeah, really, really nice. So I was happy to get that. Wayne is also a member of the Toronto Bonsai Society. And I'll put the links to his pottery studio in the description below. So that's my pot purchases at the Toronto Bonsai Society's Spring Show and Sale. I'm trying very hard not to get any more trees, but I kind of failed. So I bought this tree. This is a Tom Thumb cotoneaster. It was $5. A little tiny leafed cotoneaster. I don't know if you can see the trunk of there, but very small. And I bought it for my bonsai bench here. So it's not going to take up any more space. And, you know, I might put it in that pot, the new pot there, and make it into a cascade. So I may have to do a little bit of wiring. Maybe. So yeah, so I got that, the Tom Thumb cotoneaster. A tree very, very suitable for very tiny bonsai. The other tree was gifted to me, so I didn't buy this one. And it's a tiny Japanese maple in a little pot. So very exciting. And I think it's a cut leaf maple. So I'm also going to put that in a very small pot, and that'll be with the bonsai bench too, the mini bonsai bench. So very exciting. Thank you very, very much. On the weekend, Saturday was International Bonsai Day. Sunday was Mother's Day. And now on Tuesday here, it's Tina's 35th birthday. So happy birthday, Tina. Tina is a Canadian. On the Friday, just before the show, this came in the mail. It is a pot that was sent to me by Tom from the YouTube channel Grow and Clip Bonsai for Seniors. So thanks very, very much, Tom. It's a red unglazed pot, and it has a fancy Japanese or Chinese scene on the front of it, which is just beautiful. It's really, really nice. There's a chop on the bottom of the pot here, right there. And it's a really, really well-made pot. It's really fantastic. I really like it. So I'll have to put a tree in that for sure. So this pot came from Delhi, quality product since 2003. So there's a look at the card that came with the pot. So thank you very much, Tom. That is a wonderful pot. Wow, a juniper would look really good in here. That red color with the red bark of the juniper. Yeah, really, really nice. Thank you very much. I'm slowly getting through my list. We will get to the ficus pruning very soon. I'm going to bring a tree out from the plant room. It's my Schefflera, my clump style Schefflera. All through the winter, I've only been able to see the side view of it, and the foliage is down, so I couldn't see the trunks at all. And because I moved my very first ficus out here to the greenhouse, it cleared up some space on the bench, and I was able to turn the Schefflera and see the trunks for the very first time since fall. And It was beautiful. It was a nice sight to see again. So I'm going to bring the tree out, put it in the shade on an outdoor bench. It's warm enough today. It is getting cold tonight. There's a risk of frost, so it'll have to come in either to the greenhouse here or back in the plant room for the night. But I want to start transitioning it to the sunlight, getting it growing for this season. I'll bring the tree out and put it on the bench over here. Check it over for insects, clean it up. Just a general tidy up before we get to the ficus. Here is a look at the tree. So you can tell the window was over on this side. Everything's reaching for the light. There's a lot of debris, leaves that have died off and fallen down that I need to clean out. Some cobwebs. But overall the plant looks really healthy. Just needs a bit of cleaning up, spring cleaning. It looks large too. Like it's really grown in. So I have to be careful that all these leaves don't get sunburned. So I'll keep it in the shady part of the yard until it transitions to full sunlight. I may even keep it in the greenhouse. I'll check it over, make sure it doesn't have any insects. And then maybe spray it and then bring it into the greenhouse. I think that'd be the best place. Keep the humidity up. Because there is a lot of aerial roots growing on it. Here's a look at the interior of the tree, and there's several aerial roots. Most have rooted, but there's a few still hanging in the air. So I'll have to make sure I keep the humidity up to keep those alive. In here you can see a lot of the new aerial roots forming. Very exciting. After I'm finished the ficus in the greenhouse, I'll be working on the Schefflera next. It's time now to finally work on the ficus. So here we go. So I'm taking a look at the ficus. And you'll notice that everything on the tree is kind of growing upwards. It's reaching for the sky. I don't have any kind of branches that are cascading. And those will come, and I'll show you why in a sketch. Let's get out the Bonsai Zone book and do some sketching. So, here's how clip and grow works with cascading branches. You initially have here's your pot. And your tree goes vertical. Then you prune it. And the new branches come out at an emergence angle. So they'll come out like this. And this angle is usually fixed on a tree. This exact angle here depends on the species. So in this case, a ficus has an emergence angle where branches generally come off at the same angle. So that's what happens. Your stick comes up, your single leader, you divide it into two with pruning, you prune it again, and it divides into two again at the same emergence angle. So you can see this angle here is the same as this angle here. Then you prune it again, and it divides again and again. And you can see it goes from vertical, angled, more angled. It's starting to cascade. Prune it again, you divide again. There's one branch hanging straight down, one coming down on an angle. Divide it again and again. And you start getting cascading branches. So that's the theory behind clip and grow, is that, to go from a vertical trunk like this to developing cascading branches, it takes time before you start getting, foliage pads and that out at the outside edges that are starting to weep or cascade. In reality, trees grow much differently from what I've drawn on that sketch. They're not 2D objects, they grow in 3 dimensions. They also don't grow according to a mathematical formula. There's a lot of variables. However, that emergence angle is fairly constant on a lot of trees. Here's a close-up showing some of the primary branch structure. So these are the thick branches that come off the trunk. So your trunk is your thickest element on the tree. And then the primary branches are the next thickest. And then you come into secondary branches, which are thinner. And the branches ideally get thinner and thinner as it goes to the outer profile of the tree. A mature bonsai will have that quality. It'll go from thick branches coming off the trunk to very thin and finer branching to the outer profile of the canopy. And it takes a lot of skill to both develop that structure and to maintain it. I'll give you an example of a couple of developmental problems. I see this a lot, usually Chinese elms. They have this thick, fantastic trunk. And it's field grown, so off of the trunk was great big thick branches, and they're all cut off. And then it sprouts new branches, little thin branches like this, and then people start developing ramification. And you get these little kind of pads off of your main trunk. So on this tree there's no primary branch structure. A primary branch structure would be a thicker branch coming off. So the branches start off thick at the trunk, they taper with movement and character, and get finer and finer towards the outer profile of the tree. A tree that lacks the primary structure, it has these thin branches and the same thickness and all your ramification. So the person developing this tree has developed all this ramification out here at the ends of the branches without thickening up the branches initially. So there's kind of skipping a step, and it shows in the tree. It lacks that quality branch structure going from thick to thin. They just start off thin and they're still thin at the tips. There's no taper in them, and sometimes not much movement either. So that's something to avoid. The other thing to avoid, if I go down here, draw the same kind of pot. So again, you have let's take the same kind of well-developed nursery stock branch or field-grown material with no branches. The person, what they'll do then is they will allow these branches to thicken up. They'll grow them, really long, developing that structure. Thickening these branches up to the right thickness. So they start off, very thick at the trunk, so it has a nice transition from the thick trunk to a slightly thinner primary branch structure. But then they'll just cut the branch off at the outer profile. So if you imagine a finished profile to the tree, they'll just cut the branch off, so the branch goes from that thick at the trunk to thick to the outer profile. So you're left with a tree that has these kind of straight stumps sticking out. And usually they're very thick in the apex because that's where all the vigor is. Thick stumps, and then off of that you get an explosion of fine branches, and that is designed into pads, usually wired into pads. And then so you're not getting the taper in the branches, you're just thick at the start and thick at the outer profile for the primary branch. There's no taper, and usually because these are rapidly grown, there's very little movement. Sometimes you can wire them from a straight branch to something. It might have a slight S-bend in it or something like that. It might have a slight bit of movement from wiring. But again, with that comes wire scars because you're moving such a heavy branch. So yeah, this is the first example here, number one. The branches are all too thin. There's no taper in them. The second one here, all the branches are too thick from the base of the tree to the outer profile. So again, they're missing that developmental steps of cutting the branch off. So if this was what you started with, your long branches, you would cut them off close to the trunk as a stump. Then you would let them grow out again really long, and then you would cut them off shorter, and then
shorter again, and shorter again. And that way you get a branch that starts off long, the divisions get shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter as it ramifies. And that's how you get a quality branch. And there's no way around it. Wiring doesn't do it. It's all done with pruning. Now you can shape the branches with wire, but you have to go through these steps of pruning. Letting the branch grow long, cutting it back. Letting the new branches grow long, cutting them back. And that's how you get taper and movement. And the added bonus, because it takes a long time to do this, is that you will get quality bark on all your branches. These primary branches where they come off the trunk will be so old by the time you've got your outer profile developed that it'll blend in with the trunk, and you'll have this very mature and high quality tree in the end. And that's what you're trying to achieve, is a high quality tree. And time shouldn't be a factor. Just ignore time. Do what's best for the tree in the long run. And if you don't finish the tree, maybe someone in the future will.
When I hear people say that I don't have time to develop a branch with clip and grow, they're basically telling you that they don't want the quality in the branch, because there's no way to get a branch going from thick to thin at the tips without letting it grow, cutting it back, letting it grow, cutting it back. There's no other way to achieve that. Wiring will allow you to put some movement in a branch, but you won't get the taper. If you have a branch that's the same thickness from the base out to here, you can wire it into a bendy shape, but it's not going to have taper. It's not going to have scarring. It's not going to have character. So it's not a substitute for clip and grow. There is no other technique but clip and grow for developing a high quality tree. Wiring is just used to position branches. It's fine tuning. If you use wiring to put major bends in branches and that, again, that's positioning. It's not developing the branch. So wiring is a tool. It's not a method of developing the branch structure. It's a method of positioning the branch structure. So you still have to use clip and grow. That's the way it is. Even if you were to wire a non-tapered branch to give it movement, eventually you're going to have to clip it back, because it's going to grow out of the profile and get too thick at the tips. You're going to end up with all this thick, coarse looking branches instead of a fine branch structure at the tips. So yeah, and whether you wire or not is up to you. I find wired trees have a different look. They have a different look, and I do not like that look. I prefer a branch structure that's developed with clip and grow. I am ready to do the pruning, but first I have to study the tree. I have to think of the styling of the tree. So this tree is styled like a mature ficus. That's my style intent. And I want it to be a naturalistic style. So I think it's at that point where it still looks very natural. It doesn't look contrived or anything. I have, on this side of the trunk, I have a lot of prop roots or aerial roots that have grown. And then I have this thick one at the back, a columnar root, that kind of counteracts that. And I think it's important. It's an important design element. If you took that thick root away, it would be very heavy on the roots on this side of the trunk, and there'd be fewer roots on this side. It would look off balance, and I think that's an important root to balance it. Now, I want to develop that root, so I want to develop off of that straight root. I want to develop more fine roots coming off it. So just like the trunk, if you see the trunk here, at the base of the trunk, I've got all these aerial roots coming off of it. I want to mimic that same style on that aerial root, the thicker one there. So that's something that will be coming up. Previously on this tree, you've seen me get the circle template out to get the profile of the tree. And I'm going to do that again today as a guide for the outer shape of the canopy. I've got my circle template out, so I'll position it above the tree here. Sort of like that.
and you can kind of see, you know, what's sticking out of a rounded profile. Even if I bring the profile forward, I think it was probably pruned to about there last time, or about here. Hard to get it exact. But yeah, there's a lot of growth that's, you know, coming out of the profile, out of that rounded profile, that needs pruning up. Before I begin the pruning, I'm going to go inside and I'm going to look at my Ficus reference pictures. So one thing I know I want to do is bring these lower branches out longer and have them, instead of going upwards, kind of cascading, and then as I go up the tree they'll kind of be raised, and then the ones in the middle will be vertical. So I want that kind of look of the branches that change direction along the side of the tree. So I'm starting to get some choices for weeping branches now. So it may mean pruning off some of the branches that sweep upwards and keeping the ones that are cascading. So some big steps ahead coming for this tree. But I'm going to go in and study the branch structure on ficus trees first before I come out and do the pruning, so it's fresh in my mind. So off I go to study. And I'll show you some of the reference pictures that I think apply to the styling of this tree. So I'll add them in and you can have a look at them, and then I'll begin the pruning of the tree finally. I went in and checked my reference photos and it looks like I'm on the right track. So the lower branches generally start going uphill, then they kind of go horizontal, they dive down and kind of go up at the tips. So sort of a, yeah, that's sort of a curvature to them. So I think on the lower branches I'll eliminate the upright parts of them first. I'll do it in stages and see how it looks. I can definitely go wider with this tree and keep my height a similar height. So more, instead of a rounded canopy, spherical, a flattened out, more of a mushroom shape canopy. And that'll look more ficus-like and more like a mature ficus tree.